If you can't listen to what I say, then get divorced and never come back." With those words, my mother-in-law threw cold beer at me. That day was my mother's funeral, and I was overcome with grief. However, disregarding my feelings entirely, my mother-in-law demanded that I throw her a birthday party. Even though my mother had passed away, would I not be allowed even the chance to see her one last time? I had endured my mother-in-law's treatment for so long, but I'd reached my limit. Without me, this household would fall apart. If that was acceptable to them, I'd gladly leave. "Yes, I understand. Take care." I bowed to my mother-in-law with a smile and left the house still in my mourning clothes. At my family home, my sister Andrea was waiting for me. When I explained the situation to her, she nodded with a smile. "It feels like we're back in the old days. Let's live together, the three of us, with Lucas." And so I decided never to return to my in-laws' house. My name is Sydney, and I'm 47 years old. Currently, I work part-time at a local pharmacy 3 days a week. I've been married to Sebastian for 20 years. However, we don't have any children. To be honest, my marriage to Sebastian is probably the biggest stain on my life. There are many days when I regret why I married him. Before marriage, I worked in the PR department of a cosmetics company. There, I had many opportunities to interact with various vendors. Sebastian was one of them, a wardrobe staff member who helped us whenever we held events. When we first met, he would say the sweetest things without hesitation. When my car broke down, he would rush to help me, and I felt he was someone who could be attentive to small details. "Sydney, are you okay? Are you hurt? Thank you for coming." I was feeling so helpless alone. "I don't know much about cars." "Don't worry about it. I'll take a look under the hood." "You must be tired, so why don't you sit down and wait over there?" I watched him work from nearby. Eventually, as if by magic, the car was back to normal. When the engine started, we couldn't help but exchange glances. Attracted to his personality, we started dating and eventually began thinking about marriage. "Sydney, you're always so beautiful. Any husband would be lucky to have a woman like you waiting at home. I wish I had met you earlier." I'm actually single. Did you perhaps confuse me with Andrea? I have a twin sister. I can still remember Sebastian's surprised face when I told him that. At the time, Andrea was already married. With our striking features, my sister and I always stood out. Andrea made a name for herself as a model, while I was rising through the ranks in sales. People thought I might even become someone who would carry the brand's future. It seemed Sebastian actually preferred Andrea over me. His words often betrayed his feelings for her, but she wanted nothing to do with him. Meanwhile, I found myself falling deeper for Sebastian. Perhaps I was just a substitute because I looked like Andrea. Love truly is blind, as they say. Eventually, Sebastian proposed, and we got married. I think Sebastian harbored some vague sense of rivalry toward me. That's why he made me quit my job when we married. Of course, I wasn't entirely convinced about leaving, but I ultimately accepted his wishes. That's how much I loved Sebastian. But if that was the case, I at least wanted children. Though I hate to say it myself, if we had a child who looked like me, I believed they would be beautiful. Having married, I wanted to have children to whom we could entrust our future. However, we weren't blessed with children. This was because from the very beginning of our marriage, Sebastian didn't prepare a home for us to live in, instead declaring that we would live with his mother. I initially resisted. I never heard anything about living with your mother. Mom's alone since she lost Dad, and I'm her only son. It's natural for us to live together. I at least wanted us to live alone as a couple for a while after getting married. Sebastian simply ignored my words, and despite my repeated protests, we ended up starting life as a threesome. My mother-in-law and Sebastian seemed comfortable being together, and I felt like nothing more than an intruder. Moreover, my mother-in-law had no awareness of living together with us, appearing in our room whenever she wanted to talk to Sebastian. It was frustrating that Sebastian would welcome her without showing any displeasure. Meanwhile, Andrea was also facing marriage prospects. We were just two sisters, with no other siblings. Our parents hoped one of us would inherit the family home. All right, I'm getting married soon, and I'll take over the house. My future husband has agreed to it too. Grateful for this unexpected offer, I thanked Andrea. Thank you, Andrea. Sebastian absolutely refused to move into my family's home, so this helps a lot. It doesn't matter which of us inherits it. Let's live harmoniously so we don't end up fighting when things get tough. Of course. Not just with you and your husband, but with your future baby too. And so Andrea married and inherited the house. Soon after, she struggled with trying to conceive, but after receiving fertility treatments, she was finally blessed with a boy. He was named Lucas, and I visited them almost daily. I want a child too. My workplace even has a daycare center and is so supportive of working mothers, but here I am. I struggled to get pregnant too. According to my doctor, we have a constitution that makes it difficult to conceive. If you really want a child, you'll need to work with doctors. Don't tell me that now. All the more reason I need to have a baby soon before it's too late. Stimulated by Lucas's birth, my maternal instinct kicked in, and I threw myself into trying to conceive. However, I couldn't get Sebastian's cooperation. Sebastian, who never used to speak harshly when we first met, began saying cruel things after marriage. I thought you'd look better, but as soon as you became a housewife, you turned into such a frump. How can I possibly try for a baby with someone like you? You're the one who told me not to wear makeup at home. If you'd prefer me to wear makeup and look pretty every day, I'll do that. It's too late for that now, I know what's underneath. An ugly person hiding behind pretty makeup. If I hadn't been a twin, I might not have cared as much. But since Andrea had the same face as me, I felt like he was insulting her too, and I became furious. Making fun of my face is the same as making fun of Andrea. I don't know how much Sebastian was thinking about Andrea at that time. However, these words seemed to hit home, and he stopped making comments about my appearance entirely. When I was blamed for other things about myself, I tried to accept it humbly. After all, I had given up my career and my home in hopes of making our marriage work. However, my adversary wasn't just Sebastian's domineering attitude, but also my mother-in-law's presence. She seemed to take pleasure in criticizing me. Like something out of a drama, each day brought new scenes of a submissive daughter-in-law enduring various forms of harassment from her mother-in-law. "Sydney, this area hasn't been cleaned yet. Make sure you dust every day. This is why I hate educated women. I'm sorry. Please point out any areas where I'm lacking." That's right. You don't notice things unless someone tells you. I bet you cause trouble for your colleagues like this too. The criticism aimed at me extended to Andrea as well. Andrea had ended her 10-year marriage. She took custody of her son Lucas. While she seemed quite matter-of-fact about it, my mother-in-law latched onto this news. "You twins are truly alike. If you can't manage married life, I worry about your child-rearing abilities too. Though at least you have me to give you advice." The word advice left me more exasperated than angry. She had never given any useful advice to begin with. And predictably, my mother-in-law's criticism turned to my inability to conceive. "Sydney, when are you going to show me a grandchild? You're not getting any younger, you need to have children soon. A daughter-in-law isn't truly part of the family until she produces an heir." I'm sorry. Actually, both Andrea and I seem to have difficulty conceiving. Andrea had fertility treatments to have Lucas. I'd like to receive fertility treatments too, if that's all right. What nonsense are you talking about? The very thought of our heir being conceived in a test tube is horrifying. Besides, I hear fertility treatments are incredibly expensive. Handle your marital matters between yourselves. My mother-in-law absolutely refused to let me undergo fertility treatment. Partly because of this, years passed without me being able to announce a pregnancy. You really are a failure as a daughter-in-law. Even Andrea is better, at least she had a child. Sebastian should have married Andrea instead, since you have the same face. I can't have children because I'm not getting fertility treatment. Please, let me start treatment now. Stop it. Don't you feel ashamed? If the neighbors found out about this, I wouldn't be able to show my face in public. Our family is truly unfortunate to have a daughter-in-law like you. My mother-in-law's harsh personality wasn't directed at me alone. The reason there was no father-in-law in this house was because he had left when Sebastian was 3 years old. According to the neighbors, the responsibility apparently lay with my mother-in-law. She had devoted herself entirely to Sebastian, treating him as her whole life. Feeling neglected, her husband one day simply left and was never heard from again. He seemed to care about my mother-in-law in his own way, as he left the house and savings behind when he disappeared. Because of this, they rarely struggled financially. However, whenever my mother-in-law drank, she would always complain about her husband. I never liked that man from the start. I suppose the only good thing that came from marrying him was Sebastian. Sebastian and I have lived just the two of us. It's good you had Sebastian. He's such a filial son. To my mother-in-law, Sebastian was like a lover. I wasn't a beloved daughter-in-law, but rather an obstacle between her and Sebastian. I desperately managed the housework, trying to win my mother-in-law's approval. Also, I couldn't give up on having children. When I tried to discuss this with Sebastian, he was uncooperative, and I ended up pursuing fertility treatments alone, but without good results. Money just kept disappearing. Initially, I was using up my savings from my single days, but they were nearly depleted. My mother-in-law remained negative about fertility treatments and wouldn't acknowledge my efforts at all. Still, I couldn't let go of the faint hope that someday I would be able to face Sebastian and my mother-in-law as equals. However, before I knew it, I was 47 years old and had never been blessed with children. Honestly, I can't deny that somewhere in my heart, I had given up too. But I had endured living with my mother-in-law for the sole desire to hold Sebastian's child in my arms and raise a child together as a couple. All those feelings were in vain, my dream never came true. Eventually, I sought the outside world and, against Sebastian's opposition, took a part-time job. While working part-time, I could forget the constraints I felt at home. Then suddenly, I received news of my mother's death. Just the night before, we had talked normally on the phone and made plans to go out to eat with Andrea and Lucas. In a state of confusion, I tried to head to my family home to prepare for the funeral. That's when my mother-in-law blocked my way and said something unbelievable. "Sydney, where are you going? Today is my birthday, and you promised to celebrate it. Go buy some alcohol quickly." Her outrageous demands left me speechless for a moment. I tried to compose myself and asked my mother-in-law's permission to go out. "Please. Just for today, don't be difficult and let me go. My mother has passed away." "So what? If you can't listen to what I say, then get divorced and never come back." With those words, she threw cold beer at me. The smell of beer soaked into my morning clothes. I panicked because I didn't have any other morning clothes. My mother-in-law, completely disregarding my feelings, insisted I go buy alcohol. Even though my mother had died, would I not be allowed even the chance to see her one last time? What was my mother to my mother-in-law? At the very least, it was clear she didn't recognize her as a relative. Normally, she would wear mourning clothes and attend the funeral too. Just then, Sebastian came down from the second floor looking sleepy. Hoping for some understanding, I pleaded with him. "My mother has died. Please, won't you come with me? She was your mother-in-law too." What a pain. Everyone dies eventually, it just happened to be her time. "I'm tired from overtime work, so I'm going back to sleep." He said this and escaped back upstairs. This went beyond a simple lack of common sense. I had endured the treatment from my mother-in-law and Sebastian for so long, but I'd reached my limit. Perhaps my mother's death was meant to give me an opportunity. When I set my mind to something, I'm not the type to give up easily. Maybe my mother departed this life to help me finally let go. My mother-in-law probably wanted to return to living alone with Sebastian. Their life together 20 years ago must have been enjoyable. But time has passed, and they've both aged. There's no way to recreate those old dreams. After all, I had handled so many responsibilities in this house. Without me, this household would fall apart. If that was acceptable to them, I'd gladly leave. Yes, I understand. Take care. I bowed to my mother-in-law with a smile and left the house in my beer-soaked morning clothes. At my family home, Andrea was waiting. "Sydney, you're late. I was worried you wouldn't make it in time for the funeral. For now, I'll serve as the chief mourner." "I'm sorry. My mother-in-law gave me trouble just as I was leaving. But I'm not going back to that house anymore, so I feel refreshed. I can pray for Mom with a clear heart." "I see. You'll have to tell me the details of this refreshing development later. For now, let's see Mom off." I nodded, and somehow the three of us, Andrea, Lucas, and I, managed to get through the funeral. We had decided to keep it intimate, with only close family members, so it was a homey funeral with just our closest friends attending. After placing Mother's cremated remains in an urn and taking a taxi home, there was loneliness, but less sadness than I had expected. Back home, Lucas's stomach growled. "I'm hungry. How about we order pizza?" It was Mom's favorite. That would be a nice way to honor her memory. "Let's order enough for Mom too." Agreed. Let's put Mom's picture on the table. Now we can have dinner as four. Come to think of it, how many times had I shared meals with Mother while she was alive? I had been living a restricted life, as if chained, at Sebastian's family home. As I ate the pizza, I felt regret that I hadn't created more memories with her. That simple dinner turned into a time of sharing memories. It feels like we're back in the old days. Let's live together, the three of us, with Lucas. Since they're the ones who told you to get divorced, they can't object. Why don't you just send Sebastian the divorce papers? And so I decided never to return to my in-laws' house. Quiet and peaceful days followed. I commuted to work from our family home every day. A month later, Sebastian came to our house. He explained that he hadn't signed the divorce papers I'd sent yet. He seemed to think this was just an extension of an argument. Since arguing at the doorstep would be problematic, I reluctantly let Sebastian into the living room. "How long are you going to sulk? Come home soon and take care of the house. It's turned into a complete mess and is unbearable to live in." "I'm sorry, but I have no intention of returning." "You have your mother, don't you? Please continue living peacefully together." "Of course I get along with Mother, but I'm not that attached to her." "Despite that, you're saying you won't come back?" Just then, Lucas, returning from school, paused as he passed by the living room and noticed us. "Aunt Sydney, I'm home." "Uncle Sebastian, long time no see. You've really aged. Not looking good at all." For a moment, I worried Sebastian might start yelling. However, Sebastian seemed more shocked by Lucas's appearance than his words. Lucas had Andrea's refined features, was tall with long legs. He could easily be mistaken for a model or actor. I sometimes think about what Lucas's father was like. He was apparently a very handsome young man, and Andrea had many rivals for his attention. But it wasn't just Lucas's father who was good-looking. His beauty also owed much to Andrea's genes. Sebastian reacted excessively to Lucas's "not looking good" comment. What terrible manners! To speak that way to an elder, and a relative no less. This is what happens when you're raised by such a mother. Strangely enough, Sebastian was clearly jealous of Lucas. Perhaps he felt that Lucas's youth, beauty, and strength were all things Sebastian himself once possessed. However, Lucas casually fired back. If anyone's terrible, it's you. When I was little, you used to make fun of me for looking like a girl. Adults who hurt children's feelings are the worst. Lucas, that's enough, go upstairs. I'll handle this person. No way. Talking to this person only hurts you more. How can I not protect someone as precious as you? Lucas continued his attack on Sebastian. I know lots of things, you know. Like how you tried to borrow money from my grandmother. What? I had no idea about this. Sebastian, why did you try to borrow money from mother? No, I didn't mean to. Sebastian stammered, glaring at Lucas. But Lucas didn't flinch. I overheard it, you know. You lost money gambling and got into debt, right? You cried and begged Grandma to lend you money, but when she refused, you changed completely and left after saying horrible things. My always kind mother must have refused to give Sebastian money because she wanted him to recover on his own. Love isn't just about indulgence. However, Sebastian took mother's genuine love and twisted it into resentment. Sebastian, having completely lost face, left our house quietly with his head down. The day after mother's funeral, Andrea and I began sorting through the inheritance. We got excited finding old albums and drawings from our childhood. To our surprise, we discovered that mother had kept detailed end-of-life notes. This made the inheritance process remarkably smooth. Furthermore, we found that mother had substantial assets. With this much, we should be secure in our old age, right? Mother saved all this money by not spending on herself. We can only be grateful to mother. Let's accept it gratefully and use it wisely without waste. There was absolutely no conflict between Andrea and me, and there were no problems with the inheritance. We inherited the savings and stocks equally between us. We decided to keep the house and land in joint ownership for now. This way, neither of us can sell without the other's agreement. It's important for protecting the house. Come to think of it, we were born twins and had always lived together. Though we each found partners and our lives diverged, making it impossible to remain as close as before. But now we were together again. Just as I was feeling happy about this, my mother-in-law showed up uninvited at our house. When Andrea tried to serve her coffee, I quickly stopped her. Don't serve her anything, she'll never leave if you do. We're not related anymore, so I wish she wouldn't come to this house. Oh my, you're really bitter about this. I'll be in another room, so handle it however you want. I looked at my mother-in-law sitting in the guest room, empty-handed. I sat in the corner opposite her, keeping my distance. In the awkward atmosphere, I noticed my usually assertive mother-in-law hunching her shoulders. I asked her directly. Why are you here? Surely the person who demanded I celebrate her birthday instead of attending my mother's funeral isn't here to pay respects now? Well, I would like to say a prayer for her. But I'm relieved to see you looking well. After all, she was one of our few relatives. Listening to her unusually polite speech, I felt disgusted. So, why are you here? Please leave once you're done. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I was surprised at my own words. Moreover, I experienced for the first time how good it felt to speak so directly. My mother-in-law made herself even smaller and said in a thin voice, "Well, I need to borrow some money. Your mother used to lend me some when she was alive." I thought I might ask again. "How much did you borrow from mother?" "About $20,000. But you have this big house and property. I hear you own the mountain behind it too." "Yes, it's ours." "At least it's not yours." If I hadn't divorced Sebastian, she would have tried to sell everything I owned as if it were hers. Don't be like that, won't you consider it? We're in serious financial trouble. Sebastian got caught in an investment scam and lost almost all our savings. Oh, that's terrible. But Sebastian has a job, doesn't he? Why don't you pay it back steadily? Well, you see, he touched company money and was fired just yesterday. We have no income now. I listened to my mother-in-law's story with cold detachment. I wasn't moved at all, and I found myself thinking it might be quite enjoyable to watch them fall into misery. Please don't be so cold. We were family once. If you're willing, Sebastian is remorseful, and we wouldn't mind if you wanted to reconcile. My mother-in-law's shamelessness made me laugh out loud. She glared at me as I guffawed. What's so funny? Did you rush the divorce to prevent us from getting any money? I never even thought of that, but it turns out it was the right decision. I'm really glad I divorced quickly. Sydney, please. Lend us money. At this rate, we'll have to leave our house and end up on the streets. That's not my concern. I gave up my career to marry your son. Yet it ended unhappily. Don't think you're the only one who's suffered. I found her hateful, acting like she was the only unfortunate one. I had always been the one enduring. Just stopping that shouldn't make me the villain. Please, even $20,000 or $10,000 would do. I'll definitely pay it back. I'll double it and return it tomorrow. Are you gambling now? There's no way you could return money quickly without working. It's not that serious. I've always had a sixth sense, and I'm strong when it counts. I have a feeling today's my lucky day. Still, the idea of making $10,000 in one day was absurd. Getting more involved would only lead to trouble. My mother-in-law kept begging desperately. Please, Sydney. Help us. They could think me heartless if they wanted. I stood up, forcefully made my mother-in-law stand, and pushed her out into the hallway. As she lingered at the entrance, Lucas came with salt and threw it at her. Stop. All right, I'm leaving. My mother-in-law fled, stumbling as she hurried away. Eventually, I received notice that our divorce papers had been processed. Now I could completely cut ties with Sebastian and his mother. Living peacefully isn't always easy. This was because there was something burning intensely in my heart. Taking advantage of being alone, I had been having deep conversations with former work colleagues. Around that time, Sebastian came to our house again. Though I was thoroughly annoyed, I felt sorry about turning him away at the door. There was a reason for this feeling. I knew about his recent circumstances. When I showed him to the guest room, he tried to get close to me physically. I quickly moved away and forcefully made him sit in the far seat. Perhaps he was feeling emboldened because no one else was home. To cut him off at the pass, I spoke first. I heard about you getting caught in an investment scam. But what happened after that? Did things work out? Sebastian leaned forward eagerly, as if he'd been waiting for this. Actually, I have a good opportunity. This time it's proven to be real. I just need some seed money. Could you lend me a little? I sighed heavily through my nose. I figured you were here to ask for money. Another investment? These days, they can make videos and voices look completely real. Stop investing and work honestly. No matter how much I work, Mother keeps spending it all. I can't keep going with just honest work. I have to aim for a big win. Like mother, like son, that must refer to Sebastian and his mother. They criticize each other but can't separate. Even their gambling habits are similar. You'd prefer easy money too, right? I can double or triple it for you. So please, lend me some. Sorry, but I think differently from you people. I believe money should be earned through work. Earned through work? How much can you make working part-time 3 days a week? It's pocket change. I smiled slyly at that point. As Sebastian fell silent, I began speaking. Actually, my former company has asked me to come back. Though I've been away a long time, I've maintained contact with top management. Once I get back on track, I should have some very fulfilling days ahead. A fulfilling life was a trigger phrase for Sebastian. In his younger days, he had considered either climbing the corporate ladder or starting a business. However, his ambitions didn't match his abilities, and it remained just a dream. He's the type who feels most miserable when he's just idling away his time without working. So you can go back to your old job? The industry has changed a lot, and you've aged. In the cosmetics world, they only want young girls. That's not necessarily true. There's development happening now in anti-aging products targeting older women. The company wants me as a sub-leader for that project. Why do you get all the good things? Your parents leave you an inheritance. You can go back to work easily. I'm trying hard too, so why is everything so different? Isn't this unfair? Did you expect me to feel sorry for you? You chose each crossroads in your life. I'm the same in that respect. As a result of maintaining each relationship, there are people willing to work together with me. Sebastian just keeps claiming he could do anything without actually doing anything. Why don't you start with what you can do? I understand your jealousy, but you couldn't take my place, could you? That's not true. I'm still young, and if someone taught me, I could stand in the same position as you. Where does that confidence come from? Sebastian fell silent then. In the end, I was exasperated. Both my mother-in-law and Sebastian had been intensely envious of me and jealous. They maintained themselves by treating me as incompetent and making sure I couldn't accomplish anything. I'm amazed I managed to keep my sanity through it all. It was a long battle. And I had won that battle. Sebastian, now the loser, clung to me just as his mother had done days before. Please. I'm begging you. I took out my smartphone and warned Sebastian. If you stay any longer, I'll call the police. You have various problems you don't want the police to know about, don't you? Sebastian twisted his face in frustration, stood up, and fled. My mother-in-law and Sebastian tried to sell their house to pay off part of their debt. However, I demanded compensation from them for years of psychological suffering. As a result, all the money from their house sale came to me, and their creditors were furious. Sebastian and his mother apologized profusely to their lenders and wrote pledges to repay their debts by any means necessary. To repay their debts, they moved to a small one-room apartment. Having said they would do anything, they couldn't be picky about jobs. My mother-in-law cleans office building toilets every morning despite her bad back. Sebastian initially did the same work but felt uncomfortable because most other part-timers were housewives or students. He eventually started working as a construction laborer. However, being a middle-aged newcomer made him difficult to handle. One day, Sebastian slipped at the site and broke his right leg. While he was hospitalized, someone else took his position, and he lost his job. One day, Sebastian left the apartment and never returned. They say my mother-in-law stands on the road every evening, watching for Sebastian to come home. A year later, I returned to my former job and was appointed project leader for new product development. It's a very responsible position, but I find it fulfilling. Our new product line promotes makeup as grooming for young men, and we used Lucas as one of the models. This led to Lucas gaining popularity, and he's been appearing more frequently on television lately. Though he says he prefers a stable life, I advised him that since we only live once, it's okay to take some risks. I'm living harmoniously with Andrea, and I'm now leading a very fulfilling life.